Hello everybody and welcome back to the Ōkami walkthrough. It's time for the extras! Now there's only 3 of these in total, and the first one's primary purpose is to show off New Game Plus, everything that you can do with that, and then kind of the tomes like the bestiary, the treasures, the fish, etc, etc. The second one will show off parts of the presents from Issun that we unlocked at the end of the last part, and then the kind of final part will show off the video treasure chest. So, it's about an hour and a half's worth of stuff to deal with, but we shall begin with the New Game Plus and so on and so forth. So, once you have beaten Ōkami once, you can enter it in New Game Plus, as long as you had a save file to work from. Essentially what happens is that you will start the game with all previous stats and divine instruments, except the 5th of each type, so you won't have the likes of the Blizzard Rosaries, the Solar Flare, and the Thunder Edge. And only the Holy Artifacts, the Peace Bell, the Golden Lucky Cat, the Wooden Mat, the Golden Inkbot can be transferred over to the new file. All the others won't be transferred. Celestial Brush Techniques and Key Items won't be transferred either, as kind of that allows you to disrupt the storyline and they can't allow that. But if you kind of did certain stuff in your first run through of the game, you unlock a whole bunch of good stuff. Like the String of Beads, which you get for getting all 100 beads, which is wonderful, and I'm going to kind of explain that now. Essentially what it does is it grants invulnerability, infinite ink, and 10 times the attack power. So it's deadly, it's brilliant. Basically means you would be allowed to completely beast the game if you wanted to, so a nice smooth run through of the game. If you get it the first time, then you'll get the kind of description. All stray beads have been united. The string of beads is complete. If you complete the string of beads in subsequent playthroughs, you don't get that message. For doing it in the HD version, you get the achievement Leave No Chest Unopened, but you are going to want to leave it alone if you want to farm items or what have you, because it will kill enemies far too quickly. Now, it has one of 2 bases, we think. I mean, obviously prayer beads are very important in religion. But there are the Buddhist prayer beads, which are pronounced, I think, Juzu or Zuzu, which have 108 beads, numbers symbolically significant in Buddhism, as there are 108 passions that a person must overcome to achieve nirvana. But as a much closer number, in Islam, there is the Dhikr chant that uses tasbih beads. Essentially, there are 33 beads in a string, in allusion to the Islamic god's names, which are 99, and his most common one, Allah, making an actual 100. So in the chant, the first count of the bead string, there's 33 chants of the saying, Subhan Allah. The next 33 times is the saying, Alhamdulillah. And the other and last 34 times is the saying, Allahu Akbar. I hope I have pronounced those correctly, because obviously they are very powerful words in Islam, and I'd rather have hopefully not butchered them. But what I have just shown off there was the Karmic Transformers. Basically, upon completing the game, you can unlock different outfits, shall we say, for Army. So the way of achieving these is, for Canine Warrior Jin and Chi, you need to complete the game, that's it. For plain Amatersau, so what happens when Army runs out of ink, essentially, you need to get an S rank for total deaths. So that is 4 or less continues or game overs. For Canine Warrior Shin, you need S rank for total yen collected, which is 4 million plus. For Canine Warrior Rei, you need S rank for total enemies defeated, which is 550 plus. For Tei, it's S rank of Demon Fangs, which is over 300. For Shiranui, it's S rank for total praise earned, which should be 4,500 plus. For Shiranui's statue, you need to do it also for total praise, so over 4,500. And the same is true for the realistic 3D render of Army. Now, this realistic version of Army is based upon the original kind of treatment and idea for the game, because they were originally going to go with this very realistic look. And you will see that vision in one of the videos that is going to come in the final part of the extras. And it's a very cool idea, and I think that as cool as it is, it wouldn't have ended up working hugely well in the long run, if only because the PS2 physically could not deal with it. I mean, that is why they ultimately decided not to go with it. But also, I think it just wouldn't have looked as good because the PS2 couldn't deal with it, so that's obviously the route they went, and then they ended up with this, which is a much better art style, I think, for this type of game. Now, we're going to go through all of the kind of travel tips that we've got. We're going to go through all of the enemy profiles in the bestiary, the animals, the fish, etc., etc. That's why this part is the length it is. Obviously, if you have beaten the game once, then you will have access to these things in a new game plus, so you will be able to tell which animals are which and so on and so forth. Obviously there are, I think, some things missing from this because it is a new game plus, so like brush technique, scrolls, like the special versions, are not here. At least I think that's the case. I may have ended up picking up a few along the way, but there's not a lot I can do about that now. At least I have everything in the Presents from Issun, so that makes me feel a lot better. Now, I'm quickly going to go back to the Karmic Transformers, because there's a little bit of trivia to do with them. So, it is possible for a glitch to occur when using Karmic Transformer 4, so Shin. And it's during cutscenes. Basically, it causes Army to have a third eye when playing as Shin. I don't know whether that's present in the Wii version and or the PS3 version, but I'm sure it was certainly the case in the PS2 version. And I have to say, I don't quite think it's the type of thing that wouldn't gotten fixed. So, oh well. Now, the three other K9 warriors, Take, Hayabusa and Ko, don't appear as alternate forms for Army in this game. But the first two and Ume appear as alternate colour schemes for Army in Marvel vs. Capcom 3. So the A/X button gives normal Army, X/square grants Take, Y/triangle is Hayabusa, and right bumper /R1 is Ume. And basically, in Buddhism, which is where karma originates from, although the Japanese term for it is go, it's the deed, its consequence, and the concatenation, don't think I've ever come across that word actually, of all causes and effects in the moral order. So it means that every action has, sooner or later, a corresponding positive, negative, or neutral consequence. So it's linked to what Army has to do in order to obtain the Karmic Transformers. In other words, Army's action results in obtaining of the Transformers, thus being her karma. So they are quite literally the karmic result of our deeds. So defeating as many enemies as possible, collecting as much money, collecting as many demon fangs, and collecting as much praise, and also not dying. So all of that is quite nice. Now, seeing as also I didn't quite have a huge amount of time at the end of the actual game, I want to point out that upon completing the game, you will get Stray Bead 100, so that happens no matter what. But ultimately, that should be your last Stray Bead if you've collected everything. So that's nice and helpful. You will also get kind of Karmic Returner, which allows you to revert back to normal Army should you have used any of the Karmic Transformers. You will also get Ōkami Art, Ōkami Music, and the video treasure chest, and these are all present in Issun's present. And obviously that is what we will be looking at in the next part. And seeing as we have a huge amount of time left, I think I am going to describe to you, well, read, shall I say, the message that Hideki Kamiya placed in the art book. Because as I said, it's pretty much the only thing that I haven't covered in this thing. And that's kind of bonkers when you think about it. An absolute brilliant source of information. So, this is Hideki Kamiya's message to the fans who love Ōkami. Let's give the graphics a distinctly Japanese flavour. This idea came to me when I viewed one of designer Yoshimura's drawings. It was right at a time when I was racking my brain, trying to figure out how in the world we were going to depict the natural world that I had in mind with the realistic graphics. I think inspiration is very important in the creation of games, even when the answers you come up with are a result of much thought planted into some basic idea and eventually guided out. It can never stand up to that one single moment of inspiration. If I think about it now, the playful idea of brush skills for Ōkami was nothing short of divine inspiration, as it suddenly came to life in my head. Of course, that meant that we had wasted a lot of time working on a different angle by that point. Lol. At any rate, I take on the challenge of creating games in hope of such moments of inspiration. As anyone knows, inspiration itself is not something that is promised. No matter how long you wait, it may never come, or it may come in a form that you never expected, or it may just come all too late. Even so, I will continue to search for my inspiration, for when something will not come to you, the only option is to find it for yourself. Every day I tell myself that I will find my inspiration if I have to split every blade of grass out there. Some people may be wondering why I'm so intent on finding this thing called inspiration. Within the many comments that I've made all over the place, I've always stated that I love games, but I don't mean it like I love any game. The games that I am referring to when I say I love games are the games that moved me, that stayed with me even unto this day, those excellent games that I appreciate and respect. As a game designer, I can see a light in my predecessors. Every game comes in a different package, but those with an almost holy light that shines with an irrepressible brilliance are the ones that will go down in history as epics. The inspiration that I seek is the very source of that light. By pouring your heart and soul into an inspiration, you can give it the light. Sure, it would be great if I always had brilliant ideas in my head without having to seek out some inspiration, but I'm not a genius creator, and therefore must make extra efforts to make up for my own shortcomings. It may take a lot of time and effort, but without the light, one cannot create the product that stays in people's hearts. That is what I believe, and that is why I will continue to search for my inspiration. So, that's me. You can imagine what a pain it is for my company and my teammates to work with someone like me, if I may say so myself. I can think of no words of apology for them, as I feel like there is nothing I could say to make up for the trouble that I cause. Lol. Well, anyway, leaving such insider stories aside, I promise our players this one thing. I will continue to force my beliefs on every game that I make, until the day I leave this line of work because I am no longer able to fulfill that promise. I will do my best to father projects that overflow with their own unique allure. Projects that can stand proudly alongside those games that I cherish so much. Together with like-minded comrades, I hope to infuse the light into everything I work on, like the items included here in this very art book. And I have to say, I think that message from Hideki Kamiya is amazing. Part of me really wishes I'd managed to actually fit it into the main body of the walkthrough, because it allows to... well, it's a very good springboard for discussing game design and the process of designing games, and also just the creative process in general, because I see a lot of the same ideas that I have about the creative process in Hideki Kamiya's message here. Like, I'm pretty much the same when I say I love games and I love books and I love films. I am specifically referring to those games, books, films, plays, etc. that have stayed with me. And even though I may say I love Ōkami, I love Bayonetta, and so on, what seems like a lot, that is largely because there are surprisingly quite a lot of games and stuff that manage to reach that zenith of staying with you in your heart. And I mean, I suppose it is the case of when you have such a plethora of works to deal with, it's very easy to find at least a few that you will truly cherish. And I think the main thing that I have always had a huge respect for Hideki Kamiya with is the fact that he doesn't settle, shall we say. He's constantly trying to make the best game possible. He's constantly trying to find the idea that makes things click and work. So I mean, like with an excellent example is The Wonderful 101. So obviously it got announced pretty kind of about a year or so before it's meant to be released, maybe 2, I can't quite remember the specifics. But at that point they didn't really have what ended up being the core mechanics of the game, because it just hadn't clicked, and they were working towards the deadline, and I think it was 2 months or so before they were meant to go gold, Hideki Kamiya had that kind of moment of inspiration and introduced the kind of multiple Unite Morph mechanic into the game, and obviously they ended up rushing it because Hideki Kamiya didn't have the courage, shall we say, to say to Nintendo and the producers and stuff, please can you give us a little bit more time? I've just thought of this amazing idea which is going to make the game as good as it can be. I think because he was terrified that they were going to go over budget, over time, etc. And obviously Nintendo were really doing Platinum a service with The Wonderful 101. Obviously they butchered the marketing, but in it actually getting made, they did them a service, and so I think he felt indebted to that. And I think, at least from what I've experienced, Hideki Kamiya always feels indebted to his fans, to the people who have given him the opportunities to make the games that he loves. Obviously he won't take any bullshit when it comes to people messing with that. I mean, the Western cover for Bayonetta 2, good example. The Wii port of Ōkami. Whatever happened before Scalebound was, the actual gameplay of Scalebound was revealed, and also the original artwork that Microsoft used for Scalebound's advertising. So he's quite willing to stand up for his beliefs. Another key example is giving Bayonetta glasses, and he was just like, no, the glasses are staying. But he really does try, and I think he pretty much always succeeds because he manages to find that inspiration. He manages to create a product that is so complete and cohesive that you can't help but appreciate them. And even though obviously there are issues of taste, I mean, I know for a fact that there are people who say that Ōkami is like Hideki Kamiya's weakest game, and I'm just like, what? I know for a fact that there are people out there who absolutely despise Bayonetta, to which I'm also just like, what? But those things are, at least in my opinion, entirely down to taste. The quality of those games is apparent, and these games is apparent to anybody who experiences them. Or at least should be. And, I mean, this goes into the whole thing of how do you objectively review something. Obviously, a bit of an impossibility due to subjective opinion, etc. But I think seeing as I have done something that is a critical degree. It's helped. Now, what I mean by that is that my entire degree is was based on analysis, seeing as it was now. Good grief. But that analytical thought process allows you to separate your personal thoughts on a piece from whether it is objectively good or not. Like, I mean, it's a bit more difficult to do in literature because obviously the only thing you've got to work with is words, and words are obviously very subjective things inherently. But when it comes to film and games, you've got many more parts to them. So it's much more... Well, it's much simpler to kind of break it all down to kind of those parts, and then you can make a judgment. So, like, visually, Ōkami is very impressive, because, at least in terms of its art style, and the way the art style flows into the narrative and the feel of the game. Obviously, on a technical level, it's not necessarily the best thing, because the draw distance is kind of poor, but it all works. The gameplay, a little bit more complicated, because like it all works, which is very nice. It's a very interesting idea that works narratively and is very fun to use. There are moments where it technically doesn't work as well as it should do, so there's that. The narrative is very interesting, does very clever things with myth, is perhaps a little on the long side when it comes to getting to the point. It's like some of these cutscenes are ridiculously long because there's so much text. And it's that sort of way of trying to think about these things that allows you to have that objective look at a game. Because, like, that look removes my personal biases, because my personal opinion on this is that the technical issues are kind of far outweighed by all the good that Ōkami does, because Ōkami does so much good. I mean, even just look, the attention to detail, the fact that as you are kind of moving this picture, the scroll, well, as you're moving the scroll, it's rolling at either side. You can physically see the scrolls rolling. It's amazing. So that sort of response is the subjective. The more objective is the saying, well, this works but this doesn't, and so on and so forth, and then you can make a personal subjective judgment on that. And I can't quite remember where my point was going with all of that, other than something leading into the whole idea of trying to get an objective view of what is good, what is worthy of being art, I suppose. But going into kind of that whole art thing, Ōkami is one of the games that I would set points to if ever asked to have an example of our video game's art. Ōkami is one of those examples that I think I would choose, because visually it is like a piece of art. I think narratively it is like a piece of art, and all that jazz. Although that said, I would personally more argue that video games are only art insofar as literature is art. I would more say that video games and film and so on are works of visual literature, I think would be a more apt description. Obviously this is very very dense, and very highbrow, considering this is an extras video and you probably wanted something quite light and jolly. But it's passing the time whilst we look at this bestiary with all of this wonderfully interesting information about all the characters and enemies that we have faced down. You see, this is the curse of what happens when you decide to, you know, do these incredibly long parts and you have been through an entire art book full of information which I'm just flicking through now, and it's just like, just all of that. All of the stuff on the internet. Well, not necessarily all the stuff, but as much as I could easily access. It's kind of terrifying when you think about it. I mean, I will say that I love the fact that there is so much information about Ōkami available out there. Because it's certainly not the case for every game. I mean, decent examples of games where there's hardly anything out there is like My Sims, because obviously that is a playthrough that I did quite a while ago now. I think, oh god, it's years I would have thought. But there's hardly anything online about that. Another example would be Child of Eden, which is a game I love, but there's hardly anything out there on it. I suppose it doesn't help that that's a very small game in the grand scheme of things, and was pretty quickly forgotten. But it was still an excellent game, and as much as I have problems with its length, Child of Eden I would say is one of those games that has stuck with me. I mean, the fact that I did a playthrough of it twice kinda says a lot about that. Now this is something that, or at least what we're coming up to, is that you've got all the different forms of Yami in the bestiary, which is really cool. And it is going to show us all sorts of important information. I think I did go into the bestiary entries whilst we were actually in the fight, so now you're going to see kind of a physical representation of what I was talking about. But seeing as I have practically nothing else to talk about, I suppose I can refer to the Ōkami gossip logs, which I don't think I actually talked about, because obviously they happened during the credits. I did mention them and said that they were lovely, and I think I did mention that they were a thing. But I suppose we've got 8 minutes or so we can go through them. So obviously at the end of the credits you had those lovely little pictures of what happened to the characters, really, like stuff that happened in the past, stuff that's going to happen in the future. It's important stuff. So you have a lovely picture of Sakuya. It's an image of Sakuya before Amaterasu's resurrection. Sakuya may have seemed strict and serious in most of her scenes, but it's a more intimate reflection of her as a person, and by that I mean it's her admiring her peachy bum in the reflector that she then goes on to give Ami, which is an interesting choice. Then you have the warriors of the Village of the Wind. I drew this because I wanted to draw a scene that was overflowing with happiness. The spoiled attitudes of the 8 Kainai warriors are no doubt a result of the way Yatsu raised them. Which makes a whole lot of sense. Then you have the one shed from the moon, a long time ago in a quiet bamboo forest. This is a first time release. The focus is on Mr. Bamboo, and it's Mr. Bamboo and Mrs. Bamboo carrying the young Kaguya away from the tree. Well, the bamboo ship, I should say. Then there's the race for number 1. I drew this piece to show that even demons have their own lives and feelings too. This one looks like a pretty dangerous game, because obviously it was when we were racing Toby. Then you have children will climb. I thought about drawing the scene where Issun and Kai first meet, but I really wanted to draw a childhood portrait of these characters, Ōkami, Samikal, Kai, and also Tuskel. So I went in this direction instead. In some ways I'm not sure if they've matured at all, like Ōkami's rough nature. I don't think that one was present. It's mostly stuff at the end, which we're going to. Then there's the annual Merchant's Grand Drinking Party. In early development I never would have imagined that we would create enough merchant characters to fill a group portrait like this one. And there are a lot of merchants, it's insane. And then you have A New King of Holdiggers is Born. This just shows that there are some hardships that you can only understand once you are grown and have children of your own. Though Susanoo seems to be quite proud of his heir, which is quite adorable. And then you have the Big Daddy Jamba enjoys the hot spring. A relaxing morning soak. It looks like there won't be enough water left for the others after he's done, so it's Jamba soaking in the hot springs, obviously. And then you have Reincarnation. An unassuming flower watches quietly over the constant flow of visitors from the city. So that is actually at Rao's grave in Ryushima Coast, which we didn't visit. I feel rather bad about that, but it happens. Then you have Embraced by a Love Deeper Than the Sea, which is a picture of Otohime with her child. For every life that is lost, a new life is brought into this world. I felt all warm and fuzzy inside while drawing this picture. It's a wonderful little picture. Then you have Guardians of the North Country. Surprisingly, Lika looks like the strongest of them all. It's probably because, you know, she's small and she's got that Yoda thing going on. You have Messages of the Celestial Envoy. The foreheads of the dogs have become VIP seating for Issun, because, I mean, they were similar to Army anyway, so made sense that he would make use of them. And then finally you have A New Great Swordsman is Born. This last piece is a heartwarming moment of everyday life in Kimiki Village. You can see Mr. Orange in the background doing the laundry. You can also see Mrs. Orange, I think, and you guess you can, just about. But obviously it's the child that Susanoo and Kushi conceived in the cave way back when we actually defeated Orochi, when we had the festival, you know, you remember. All the way back months ago when that happened. Yeah, so that's all of that. Obviously now we are just looking at the fish that I spent a ridiculous amount of time fishing. I would go into all the specifics information about these guys, it's like the chances of finding them, where you find them, but really, I actually cannot be bothered. Just go look up a guide, it's what I did. Some of these fish are atrocious. Because, I mean, the big ones in particular, because some of them have such small fishing capture things, like obviously you've got to wiggle the nunchuck stick to keep it in the green section to catch the blooming fish. But some of those guys, it's so small that you're just kind of struggling the entire way, and then you have to do it multiple times. It's just like, no! And the other frustrating thing is that I found with the fishing is that you tend to... Obviously, the more fish you catch, the bigger and bigger fish appear. But sometimes all you want is like the smallest fish. So sometimes you reach a point where you're past that and you have to come out of the fishing and then go back in to try and get the fish. Because you want the small fish, not the big fish. And it's just like, why do you do this to me? It's just evil. But either way, this is pretty much the end of all of our tomes and so on and so forth. This has been a very, very long extras video. Don't worry that the next one is shorter and the other one is about 30 minutes again, but that one's going to be slightly more engaging, shall we say. Because the next part is going to be the concept gallery and also showing the music box function. And then, as I said right at the start of this part, the final extras video is the video treasure chest. So there's going to be lots of trailers which we'll talk about, all the differences that you can see in them, and then also some of the concept well, 2 of the concept trailers that were created for the game, which are where quite a few very, very interesting ideas are present, and are a very good way of seeing where the game began in terms of its concept and where it gradually moved to. So it's very helpful. And obviously, the last bit of Tomy stuff that we've got is all of the treasures. I'm pretty sure we collected everything. It's kind of annoying, like you get a full stamp on the bestiary, but you don't get a full stamp on anything else. It's just like, why? Yes, I don't think you do. Be rather embarrassed if it was the case that you do, and obviously I failed miserably in my attempt to get 100%. But I got all the stray beads. I S-ranked everything. That is more than enough of 100% for me, I think. As you can see, I've probably slightly lost my mind doing this commentary part. So hopefully things will look up in part 2 of the extras. But either way, there we go, that is pretty much everything that I have to show you for today. So I hope you join me in part 2 of the extras. See you then.